Quote of the day. You've survived every version of yourself so far. The quiet days, the loud heartbreaks, the wild dreams. So yeah, you are more than capable of becoming everything you still hope to be. That is the quote of the day. Now let's get right into this video. Now, I must admit, this week's NXT was not the best episode of NXT we've seen so far or seen ever. This was not the best episode. I'll keep it 100. I'll keep it a buck. I'll keep it honest. This was far from the best episode that we've seen. This episode was all right. It was decent. But truthfully speaking, though, I do think everyone, the superstars involved, the fans, everyone is still recovering from the crazy jam-packed wrestling weekend we had. So I'm gonna, give credit where credit is due. The superstars still showed up and showed out and stuff like that to the best of their ability. But yeah, like I said, though, this was not the best episode, but it was still decent nonetheless. But from the looks of it, though, next week's NXT episode is going to be an absolute banger. We have triple threat matches, title matches. We have, one-on-one, Ricky Saints versus Jasper Troy, Obafemi, the ruler versus Inamura versus Josh Briggs. It's going to be an absolute banger next week. So I'm excited for that one, But anyhow, though, let's just get right into what happened in this episode of NXT. So right at the beginning of the show, we got an in-ring promo. It was from between Fatal Influence, Macha Slamovich, and Sol Ruka, as well as Zarya. This was just to set up basically the main event of tonight, which was a 6-woman tag team match. It was between Fatal Influence versus the team of Macha Slamovich, Sol Ruka, and Zarya. So that was pretty cool, Macha will be facing off against JC Jane for the championship. So it's going to be both championships on the line. It's going to happen at TNA Slammiversary. So that's pretty cool. Winner gets the championships, winner takes it all, So that should be pretty cool. So that's basically what that's set up, But anyhow, though, this was a pretty cool segment. And we got reintroduced to Macha Slamovich, like seeing her face, hearing her talk, which is pretty cool. So now we're kind of familiar with her. So that's pretty cool. Anyhow, though, after this opening in-ring promo segment, we got our first match of the night. It was a 6-man tag match. It was Joe Hendry. Say his name and he'll appear. I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. Ooh, I'm getting way better at that, huh? Anyhow, though, it was a 6-man tag match. It was Joe Hendry and Mike Santana and whoop that trick, whoop that trick, yeah, whoop that trick. Oh yeah, it was Joe Hendry, Mike Santana, and Trick Williams versus 3 members of the group known as Dark State. And yeah, I don't know which members it was. They didn't really say the names of all the group members, and I'm not too familiar with Dark State, if I'm being truthfully honest, but it was versus 3 members of Dark State. Anyhow, though, this was a pretty cool match for what it was, but it did end in no contest, which was pretty sucky. We had 2 matches tonight end in no contest, and I don't really like when matches end in no contest. I like it when there's like a definite ending, a definite winner. Like, I feel like no contest finishes don't add anything. But anyhow, though, for what it was, this match was pretty fun. There was pretty cool moments. There was funny moments. So let's just get right into some highlights. So Joe Hendry ended up hitting back-to-back fall-away slams, which was pretty cool. We had a huge standoff brawl moment breakout where all of the men, just got in the ring, just started throwing hands, throwing feet, throwing toes, throwing fingers, just had a huge brawl, which was pretty funny. But like I said, though, this match was pretty quick because it did end up in no contest. But throughout the match, there was some, static, some tension between Joe Hendry and Mike Santana and Trick Williams. So Joe Hendry and Mike Santana did end up turning on Trick Williams because Trick Williams was acting a little bit too cocky, a little bit too egotistical, too full of himself. They were on the same team. Trick Williams just couldn't coexist, the magic word. Coexist. Yeah, but Trick Williams just couldn't coexist with them. Mike Santana and Joe Hendry ended up just turning on Trick Williams. They both just jumped Trick Williams, threw him out the ring. And soon after this happened, this match literally turned into like a 2v6, which was pretty funny. It was like all the Dark State members plus Trick Williams versus Joe Hendry and Mike Santana for a little bit. And out of nowhere, while we think we're getting like this matchup anyway, while we think Joe Hendry and Mike Santana are going to get jumped, out of nowhere comes out the group named The System. They come out to the aid of Mike Santana and Joe Hendry, and they deal with Dark State. And I'm pretty sure they had some beef and some issues with Dark State in the past, so they just came back to get their lick back. But yeah, because of this interference, this match ended in no contest, so no definite winner, it's just a disqualification, no contest. So that was that. But it was pretty funny how, Joe Hendry and Mike Santana did turn on Trick Williams. They're like, we don't have time for this. Just get out. If you don't want to be here, don't be here. It was pretty funny. But after this, though, we got our first video package segment. We got multiple video package segments throughout the night, and it was basically just telling the history of the Don, Tony D'Angelo, and the history of the Don family, the D'Angelo family. So that was basically what it was. And throughout this show, we got like, I'm pretty sure it was three video packages just explaining the history between, the Don, Tony D'Angelo, the D'Angelo family, what happened, what led up to where we're at, how they got together, like the things they were able to accomplish, how, Stax stabbed them in the back, how Luca Crucifino stabbed D'Angelo in the back, stuff like that. It involved Rizzo, Luca Crucifino, Stax, and Stax Lorenzo and Tony D'Angelo. So we saw all of them. And I thought this was pretty cool. This was pretty well put together too, might I add, because it served its purpose. It did really catch me up on the whole history because I didn't know 100% of it. I wasn't like 100% tuned in with this story. Like I knew the gist of it, the important stuff, but like it kind of took me down memory lane, so that was pretty cool. It got me all the way caught up, and I was 100% down. I'm like, okay, I 100% know what's going on now, so it was pretty cool. These video packages were entertaining and they definitely served their purpose. After this, though, we got our second match of the night. It was the WWE Evolves Women Champion, Callie Armstrong versus Carmen Petrovich. And let me just say, Callie Armstrong, I loved her in-ring presence. I loved how she carried herself, like her composure. She has like this flair in the ring. I don't know. She moves like, I don't even know who I could compare it. Like she's just so unique in the ring. She has like this intensity to her, like this aggressive and like this confidence in the ring. It looks, dude, she's going to be the next big thing very soon. That's all I'm going to say. She looked like it was a very short match, but she still managed to, stand out, which was pretty cool. But some history about Callie Armstrong. She retained her WWE Women's Evolution Championship against Natalya recently. So she defeated Natalya recently. The future Hall of Famer Natalya, the same Natalya we both know. We all know which Natalya. The one and only, the BOAT, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there will be. Anyhow, though, some more history about Callie Armstrong. She was a former track and field record holder, so like she's very fit. She's in shape, looks amazing, and I'm telling you, the in-ring presence, everything. Like she's like the next big thing. I'm telling you right now. Mark my words. Soon enough, this woman right here, she's gonna be main eventing. But anyhow, though, this match was really short. It was like, I don't know, maybe like 3, 4, 5 moves at most. So like some highlights from it were that Carmen Petrovich hit like an off the ropes donkey kick move that looked pretty cool, and Callie hit a huge power slam. And those were like the two things I mainly remember. But like besides that, it was really short because Muscle Muffin, JG, Jordani Grace ended up coming out and she laid out everyone, man. She ran through both women. She laid out everyone, including Ava's assistants. So Muscle Muffin, Jordani Grace comes out and she calls out Blake Monroe. She says, Blake, get out here. I'm not leaving this ring until I get an explanation why you did what you did. So she's standing in the ring waiting for Blake Monroe to come out, right? Blake Monroe doesn't come out. Instead, we get a video package. And Blake Monroe basically says she did what she did because she hates everything about JG, the Muscle Muffin. She hates everything about Jordani Grace, And she says that she also did it because Jordani Grace isn't even worthy of holding her shoes, let alone in NXT Women's Championship. And I was like, dude, that's cold. That is cold. This has the potential to be a very good rivalry. I'm really pumped for this, So that was really cool. That was a really cool segment. And yeah, after this, though, we got a backstage interview segment between Lash Legend and Miss Parker, Jada Parker. And it was just basically both women just going at each other, saying what they were able to accomplish in the Women's Battle Royal at Evolution, and saying basically how they should be or how they are next in line for a title match, stuff like that. And those both women just going at each other saying, I deserve this title match more than you. I'm the next in line. You don't deserve it. The crowd was actually popping for me. Did you see what I did? Did you see what I did? It was basically all that. It's pretty fun, pretty cool. So I'm assuming we're going to get like maybe a rivalry to determine like a number one's contender between them or something like that, something along those lines. But this was pretty cool. It was pretty entertaining. And I am a big fan of both of these women. So, I like the segment. But after this, though, we got our third match of the night, which was this was undoubtedly the match of the night. It was the family business triple threat match. It was Luca Crucifino versus Stax Lorenzo versus the Don, Tony D'Angelo. And like I said, this was undoubtedly match of the night. No questions asked, no ands, ifs, or buts about it. This was awesome, This match was so entertaining. It was so action-packed, dude. I was I was entertained from start to finish. Everyone looked strong too, which was the most important thing. Nobody walked away from this match looking weak or looking goofy. Everybody looked strong. They held their own. They showed up and they did what they had to do, you know? But some highlights from this match were that straight off rip, Tony D'Angelo goes off on everyone. You know, he just starts attacking everyone. He's like, he sets the tone. He's like, there's no friends here, no teams, no family, no nothing. It's every man for himself, you know? And he ends up hitting a flying clothesline on Stacks. He hits a huge spinning spine buster on Luca. Luca hit a huge double DDT on both Tony D'Angelo and Stacks. Stacks hit a springboard flying forearm, which looked pretty amazing. Stacks ended up sending Luca Crucifino flying into steel stairs. Luca Crucifino hit a running senton on both the men, which looked pretty cool. Stacks set up Luca. He draped Luca in the middle ropes, you know, like had him like just draped on the middle ropes, and he comes off the top ropes with a modified coup de grace, you know, a double stomp onto Luca's back, which looked pretty awesome. And he did that to Tony D'Angelo as well. We got this pretty cool spot where all three men were trapped in a submission. Like everyone had a submission on each other, which looked pretty amazing. And nobody wanted to break it up. You know, I'm like, if all of them tap out, who wins? It was pretty funny. But they ended up getting out of it. After this, though, some more highlights that happened with that. Tony D'Angelo sent Stacks hurling over the top rope, and it looked like a pretty nasty bump, but everybody was fine. Tony D'Angelo hit a double German suplex, like picked up both men and just German suplexed them at the same time. I'm like, dude. And after this, we got a big powerbomb suplex pop spot. You know, that spot we always get in triple threat matches, you know, quadruple threat matches, fatal four-way, stuff like that. Luca Crucifino hit a double springboard clothesline. Stacks and Luca hit a tag team shatter machine on Tony D'Angelo, which looked amazing. Tony D'Angelo ended up spearing Stacks through a wall, which I was like, dude, like that was, I don't know. I want to call it the moment of the match, but maybe not. But there was so many moments. This might have been moment of the match. So he literally came in full steam, like rampage, full steam, just speared Stacks through a wall. I was like, dude, okay. And after this, he just goes berserk. He spine busters Luca Crucifino through a announcer's table. Then he gets in the ring and then he hits Stacks. Tony D'Angelo hits Stacks with his finisher for the win. And Tony D'Angelo pins Stacks Lorenzo 1-2-3 for the win. And then we get this pretty cool sentimental scene where Tony D'Angelo is just walking away from the family. Everybody's laid out. And he looks at his hat, which is draped on the ring post, you know? His hat is sitting on the ring post. He looks at it and he's like, okay. He shakes his head, like kind of announcing, you know, this chapter of my story is done. This is over with. This was the last match. This was the end of the story. And he walks away from the family. So I'm pretty interested to see where he goes from here and where everybody goes from here, honestly. You know, both Luca Crucifino and Stacks Lorenzo, I'm interested to see where they go from here, you know. This was an amazing rivalry, and if this was the end, they did it justice. This was an amazing match. After this, though, we got a backstage segment where Tavion Heights confronted Rin for throwing in the towel last week in his match versus Charlie Dempsey. Tavion said, like, if it was me, I would have never quit. And you knew I would have never tapped out. I would have never given up. So why did you throw in the towel? And Ren says, I had to. I threw in the towel because I didn't want to see you get hurt. I knew you weren't going to give up. And you're no good if you're hurt, if you're injured. So I had to. I had to do what I had to do, you know? And this was a pretty neat interaction, kind of just building more chemistry in the team, you know? And the no quarter catch crew. So that was pretty cool. And next week, Ren is facing off against Blake Monroe, I believe, in her Blake Monroe's first NXT match, which is pretty cool. After this, though, we got an in-ring promo between Josh Briggs, Inamura, and the Ruler, Oba Femi. So Josh Briggs comes out, and he comes out steaming. He says Yokishi Inamura squandered the opportunity of a lifetime. He says that Yokishi's only been here for, a limited amount of time, barely even a year, and he's already in PLE's, facing off for the NXT Men's Championship. Like, he goes off. He's like, how is Inamura already in a championship match on a PLE? I've been here for 4 years. I haven't even sniffed an opportunity at the NXT Championship. And then he just starts going off saying how he deserved it more, and that Inamura just squandered the opportunity. He wasted it. He couldn't pull the trigger. He says that Inamura is too nice. He doesn't have what it takes. And the ruler, Obafemi, comes out. He says, Josh, because of your involvement, you ruined the match. He says, I was going to win the match regardless. The ruler was going to come out on top regardless. But now the win I had at NXT's Great American Bash is tainted because of you. Now everybody doubts my victory because of you. And he says that, Briggs, you don't deserve a damn thing. You don't deserve anything. You don't deserve a title match. You have no honor. And then Yokishi Inamura comes out right after this and he talks to Briggs. He says, Briggs, you don't speak for me. I am my own man, and I will do whatever it takes to win this NXT championship, but I will do it with honor. So he kind of, puts Josh Briggs in his place, saying, I don't need you. I didn't need you to cheat for me. I could have won it by myself. You costed me the match, basically. And you don't have honor. I fight with honor. And if I'm going to win this, I'm going to win it the right way. And I'm going to do it the right way. And I'm going to win with honor, which was pretty cool, pretty amazing. I like the promo from all three men, the intensity. They said what they needed to say. They got to the point. Pretty good. After this, though, we got an Ethan Page video package, a video segment where he just basically announces that next week he's going to have an in-ring celebration celebrating the fact that he retained his NXT North American Championship and the fact that he beat Ricky Saints. And he announced himself as supposedly America's favorite superstar. And I was like, okay, you're pretty good, buddy, but hold your horses. After this, though, we got Saints. He was basically talking backstage in an interview segment, kind of responding to the whole thing. And then he sent a warning shot at Jasper Troy because, Jasper Troy did attack him at NXT's Great American Bash during his match versus Ethan Page. So next week, we're going to get a one-on-one match, Jasper Troy versus Ricky Saints. And Ricky Saints basically tells Jasper Troy to watch out because I'm going to deal with you. So watch your back. Next week, when it comes down to it, I'm going to teach you a lesson. So that's basically what happens in that segment. And after this, we got our main event. But anyhow, though, this was our main event. It was Sol Ruka, Zarya, Matcha Slamovich versus Fatal Influence in a 6-women's tag match. So, like I said, this match was pretty good. It was pretty decent. Nothing too memorable, if I'm being honest. And there were interferences in this match, too, from the Calling Sean Spears group. So I'm like, that kind of, I don't know. But anyhow, though, like I said, this match was pretty decent. I just thought that the triple threat match should have been the main event instead, but I don't really care too much either way. Let's just get into some highlights. So, JC Jane ended up hitting a pretty cool Hurricanrana. Sol Ruka power slammed Jasmine Nix into JC Jane. Fallon Henley hit this modified 619 where she kind of did a 619 using the ring post, which looked pretty cool. Zarya ended up tagging in the middle of the match, and she completely comes in and she woman handles everybody in the ring. She lays everybody out. The big powerhouse, clotheslines, big power slam. She laid everybody out. After this, though, Zarya hit a top rope flying double clothesline. Matcha tags in. Matcha hit a pretty cool spinning heel kick. Fatal Influence in this match actually did end up hitting a lot of cool tag moves, so that was probably the highlight for Fatal Influence. All their tag moves, their sequences, they look like a well-oiled machine. Zarya ended up hitting a big spear on Jasmine Nix, and due to interference from Sean Spears and his group, the Calling, like I said, Matcha Slamovich was able to pick up the win. She was able to hit her finisher on JC Jane, and she pins JC Jane 1, 2, 3 for the win. And that's how your show ends. And this is basically setting up more tension for the Matcha Slamovich versus JC Jane winner takes all match at TNA Slammiversary. But anyhow, though, that was how your show ended. But like I said, this show was pretty solid, but we have definitely seen better NXT episodes. And like I said, everybody's still, recovering from the jam-packed weekend. So, I'm going to be a little bit less, analytical, a little less, a little bit more laid back and not too, picky and stuff like that. So I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Everybody was tired. Everybody still showed up. Everybody still did what they had to do. So that was good. So I'm going to cut them a little bit of slack. Overall, though, I'd probably rate this episode of NXT a solid 6.5 out of 10, maybe 7 out of 10. We only had 4 matches, and 2 out of the 4 matches were really quick and ended in no contest. So, got to be realistic and got to be fair, Next week, though, is definitely going to be a banger. So if you didn't watch this show, definitely tune in next week if you want to. It's going to be amazing, and I'm looking forward to it. But besides that, though, besides the no contest finishes, I really didn't have any complaints. Besides that, though, I didn't really have any more complaints, too many more complaints. My only thing that bothered me was the no contest finishes. But besides that, everything else was pretty good, pretty fine. And like I said, everybody is still recovering this and all that. So you got to cut them some slack. Anyways, though, that was my review of this week's episode of NXT. That was my breakdown. That was what happened. Those were my thoughts. And yeah. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. And thank you for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to. And like, comment, and subscribe if you choose to. As always, it's been a pleasure. I'm out.